the jump from Germany to Canada. I mean, I want to ask, from Pakistan to Germany and then from Germany to Canada, seeing already किस तरह आपका एक shift था, moving from Pakistan to Europe and then from Europe to America. What was it like?
Yeah, it was actually a good experience. But some recruiter from Amazon Alexa team reached out, and then they said, "Okay, we have some position in Alexa team. Will you be interested?" Position within for employees
Oh,
to kind of like give them skills if they don't have, and then you just like as I said, as you encounter, then you learn. So I didn't have the role where I myself had to build models.
what was it like transitioning from one giant Amazon to Apple? I mean, Apple in itself a big name.
Yeah, it's a big name, and sometimes
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of this podcast where we link the gap between the industry and the academia. This is a very special episode where we're bringing on Zaid Ahmed from all the way from California, who has worked at Apple and Amazon and other companies and have also worked in Germany. So let's bring him in. Assalamu alaikum, Zaid.
Assalamu alaikum, Chair. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Alhamdulillah. आप कैसे हैं? How's your day going?
They just started. Thank you. How about you?
All right, I'm good, alhamdulillah. All right, so let's begin with the podcast. So basically, knowing that you are a student of Air University, and it's
Yes.
quite fascinating for me that someone at Air University being part of Apple, and this in itself is really fascinating. So tell us about your journey if we go
Oh,
back from the
actually,
beginning.
uh, this is interesting. Thank you so much for inviting me and for your time, opportunity
Thank
to
you.
speak to you guys. It's nice to connect back to the school where I graduated from. Actually, I was the very first batch of Air University. So,
Oh,
as
really?
Air University was formed when we were in the second year of bachelor. Initially, it wasn't called Air University. It started as Fizaya College of Information Technology, and then
See, see.
we started like that for 2 years, and then the charter was approved, and then Air Force put together this university, and then changed the name to Air University. And I'm like one of the very first graduate, and it's funny like. When I went after graduating, because I had to go to Germany for my master's, and then they didn't know they didn't know how the certificate, the final degree certificate should look like, because I was the very first one. They hadn't like designed it or anything. I'm like, okay, I need mine. And then they said, okay, give us some time. We have to design our final certificate, and then that's
Interesting.
kind of
All right, so I'm gonna ask, what was the thought process behind joining the university as a computer science student or choosing computer
okay.
science?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Like, actually, I have very interesting backstory. So generally, I was interested in computer science even from my high school time, grade 11,
Hmm.
12. I started doing
See, see.
got exposed to some programming. So I was very interested into this area. So I knew I wanted to do bachelor's in computer science. I did my grade 11, 12 from Multan. And
All right.
after the final exams, then the summer starts. And my dad said, let's go to Islamabad for a summer vacation. So we went to Islamabad, spent a month there, and really like it was all green and very different from Multan. Nice climate, a lot of hiking and mountains, and really enjoyed it. And I thought, okay, you know what? I'm gonna find a university here, as opposed to
Okay.
Multan. So
See. So
I
adjusting with
I didn't
yes.
know
Yes.
what universities because back then that was 2000, year 2000. So there was not much of internet, or information wasn't like you have today. So I didn't know.
Hmm.
I only knew of like one university in Islamabad. That was Qaidazin University. So I thought,
Oh,
okay, I'll go
interesting.
and I apply there. So after, like, I don't know, July or sometime there, I went there and then got the application form, applied, and then I find out, okay, there is something called entry test that I have to give. I didn't know about
Oh,
that.
interesting.
And that happened to be the next week. So I thought, okay, next week I gave the test, but I didn't get in to the in I didn't get the admission. So I'm like, okay, what do I do now? So I started looking some other universities, and then soon found out that a lot of universities' admission dates have passed. Because when I gave my test, I didn't apply any other university. So I was just like waiting that I'll just get in Kailasan University, and then wasted all the time. And then I thought, okay, I'll just go back to Multan and then find some university over there. Seems like all the universities' admission dates have passed here. So I went to G9. There is this bus station, Bus Arda. They have a bus that goes to Multan. I bought the ticket and I was waiting there. And while I was waiting, I saw this guy
So,
who was in my grade 9 and 10. And then at the time he moved to Islamabad, I'm like, oh, Avaz, how are you? Like, long time no see. And we started talking, and then he's, what's up? And I told him my story, and he's like, oh, there is this university called Bahria University. Their admission deadline is much later, so you should maybe go try there. I'm like, oh, really? So I took my bag and I just actually went back to the apartment I had rented. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to Multan. Let me go to Bahria University. So the very next morning, I go there and go to the office and I talk to them. They're like, okay, our admission has already happened. You're too late. Like, oh no.
no.
So I was disappointed walking. You know where the Bahria University is? So I was walking from there and I had to take a van that's at the intersection of where I forgot the street, what the street was, that's where you get the van. And I was walking. I saw on the right side there was this big gate and said air headquarters, bunch of guards that are standing by the gate. And as I was looking this way, I saw a very tiny sign. It said Fizaya College of Information Technology. And I looked at it, I'm like, what is this? Maybe this is some, college. They do some certificates or things like that. That was very popular back then. And I just started walking. But then I stopped. I'm like, what is it? Maybe it's something interesting. Uh, and I went closer to it. And then I walked over to the guard and I asked him, what is this? And he said, oh, this is some new kind of college that just opened like a few weeks ago. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, I don't know what it is. It's just right there, over there. If you want to go, you can just walk over and ask them. And I'm like, really? I can go in? He said, yeah, you can go in. And I went
Maybe not
in.
very well known at that time.
Yeah. And I went in and I go to the office and I asked somebody, I think his name was Akbar Sahib. He was the admission kind of clerk there. So I asked him that I've come from Multan and this is my story and what is this college all about? He's like, here is the admission prospectus, and
Oh,
we're actually like looking for candidates like you, and the admission test is next week. I'm like, oh, really? That's so cool. And I looked at the admission, the booklet, and then it was exactly like computer science program, kind of thing that I was looking for. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And okay, what's the process? Okay, I need these things from you. I'm like, okay, I don't have all these things. Uh, I have the fee. I had some money, so I said, okay, here's the fee. I can buy the book and then buy the admission form. He helped me like fill out and then said, okay. don't worry about some of the things you're missing. So you can bring them next week. There's an admission test. I'm like, what's on the admission test? He gave me some information, and I said, okay, I'll go back to Multan and bring these missing documents, and then I'll see you next week. So I did the test, I got in. That's kind of how my entry to a university was, completely like by chance, no planning at all.
So, right off the bat, you are part of the pioneering batch of Air University. How did these 4 years go for you? What was the experience like, knowing that it started right off at the beginning, pioneering a new university, a new experience, a new city? What was it like?
Actually, it was really good. It was really good because of many factors. One, Dr. Ijaz Muhammad, he was excellent, like a professor. He actually pioneered and started this initiative. So he was so passionate about it. He's like, I want to start the best school for Pakistan Air Force in computer science, and then this is where the world is going, and we want to be in the forefront of that. So he was very passionate, amazing guy. So he was the professor at NUST at the time. So he brought in really good faculty. He brought in really good teachers from NUST and from different like parts of Air Force. Uh, and he picked one of the best, curriculum. So I think he himself studied at USA, so he just kind of like followed that curriculum. So it was
Right.
very, very, very good experience because complete focus on the first batch. So it's not like there are like 100 classes going and thousands of students walking around. It's just this one class, and then you have to have the full attention on this class, and that's your goal to make these people successful.
Makes sense.
So we got a lot of attention, and then very like close relationship with the administration and the teachers, and because that was the only class. So there weren't that many classroom, not that many students. It was just really one class. So the whole faculty and the administration were just focused on that class and giving them a lot of attention. And their goal was that we succeed. So it was actually very fun and very kind of different experience. So we really enjoyed it. And we were actually
Interesting.
kind of we were part of the people to provide ideas and what to do. Okay, how should this thing be? So we were actually contributors of shaping this school. How should do this thing and how should we do that thing? And then we were really like actively participating in the decision making of shaping the school.
Acha Zaid, so I want to ask, like, back in 2000s, what was it like being part of CS? Because nowadays it's quite different. We
Yes.
see this different stream of people talking about learning something, and alongside with that, we see people talk about how they are working on a certain skill. They want to build up a certain skill, whether that's full stack development, some sort of DevOps, or someone's going into cybersecurity. I mean, back in 2000s, it was the early days in Pakistan. Matlab, internet bhi itna nahi tha. It wasn't quite widespread. So, what was it like being clueless in that time? I mean, basically, what was it like in early 2000s?
Yeah, I think you guys are fortunate. So
Yeah.
it was a struggle. I would say we didn't have YouTube, but we were fortunate enough that kind of like Google had started 2002, and there was somewhat internet. I wouldn't say that much. It was so slow, it will take forever to load things. But uh, the focus was just the books. So instead of like learning a lot from various YouTube videos, so you actually have to read the books and then talk to your professors and teachers and then have discussions. And then so learning was more around that. So you have to focus, read the whole book, read everything that's in it, do the exercises that they gave at the end, and then have questions, talk to the teacher, have discussion. That was kind of the classic learning process. But I think you guys are fortunate that now there's just so much information on the internet, and then learning has really like on steroids. So, so that was the contrast. But I think there is still value. Some people may say, okay, you don't need the college degrees in schools anymore. We really had the books, so we had to read the books, get more books from the library, and talk to the professors, have deeper discussions about the question that you come across. So there was not too much extra material. So the books was the only thing. So you guys are fortunate that today you have access to so much information, which is great. So I think you can learn a lot more than we did. And then that's like so much better for your career and then your success going forward.
Like back in those days, learning from actual books, and like today we still learn from books, but the focus has now more shifted towards like how you're focusing more on academia rather than a skill. So like you focus more with books, and like you have this direction towards books to learn from. You go to the library, you sit and read from books. I mean, if we contrast that with learning from directly from the internet, how would you describe that? Like,
I think
does it
it's
take you
it's
more towards
great.
a research stream?
I think it's great. The opportunity that we have today, learning from the internet, is just amazing. So we should just leverage everything that we have available to us. So I wouldn't say just stick to the books only or just go back. We had book because there was no other choice. So now you have choices, so you just avail all those choices. So that will just make your learning more deeper, provide you more options, provide you more perspectives on the same topics. So I think it's really good. So you should just go for it.
Amazing, wonderful. Acha, I want to ask, when you finished your graduation and you graduated from university and you shifted towards this new paradigm, which is jumping from university to masters, what was the thought process behind that, and how did it end up being Germany?
Good question. Uh, yeah, I wanted to do masters. I was inspired by, I think, a lot of the teachers, the faculty members. They had studied in US, Canada, like different places, and I was inspired by them. So I wanted to do the same. I wanted to actually, at the time, I wanted to do PhD. So I was looking for schools in Canada, USA, England, and Germany. So the reason for me selecting Germany was the money. So all the Canadian, American, and British universities has very high fees. So when I researched Germany and I found out, oh wow, no fees, it's free. So that was the main reason. So it's completely free education. You don't have to pay any tuition fees. So I'm like, okay, perfect. And the medium of instruction was in English. So it's not like I had to learn German and I had to study German. So everything was in English. I'm like, okay, why not? Let's go to Germany. It's free. And also my sister, older sister, she used to live in Germany. So that was another
All right.
kind of reason that I could see her.
Quite interesting. So, what did you major in, if you ask, in masters, or what was your research direction that you went with?
In the master's, my program was called Digital Technology. At the time, digital technology was was really like a next thing, not the AI yet. It was the digital. So it was a program across four universities focused on research and learning into the new digital technology that was emerging at the time. I think you can just call it computer science. It was mainly computer science. Digital technology was just the name. uh, we and the focus was research into different areas. So the the masters, like the final year project that I did was into image processing, some machine learning, the education, and building like a game type platform and environment. So it was that. And then my master's thesis was into recognize and matching of shapes, not quantitatively, quantitative processes, you have a bitmap and then you have all these pixels and then you run the algorithm, try to play with the pixels and try to match with another one. And the thinking at the time was, oh, that's very like a machine type thing. But humans don't think like that. Like we don't, when we look at one picture and another, we don't start looking at uh, their bits and then the locations X, Y, and compare like that. We think more qualitatively. We think, okay, well, this is
Yeah.
large. This is kind of similar to that one. Maybe this side is similar, but that side is different. That's how we reason, right? So the thesis was, can we develop an approach of representing and matching of shapes more like a human? So that was my thesis where I kind of came up with some approach for translating images into some more qualitative representation, and then you just delete the image, you just keep the qualitative representation. And then as you encounter new images, you run the algorithm of conversion, and then you try to reason that is this similar and how much similar, how much different, and then try to like a reason and respond that way. So it's much less processing because you're just reasoning on the qualitative aspects, and then
Interesting.
it has it's not a lot more resilient. Like okay, color changed or something changed over here. You could do reasoning with the partial image, so it had kind of those type of benefits, but nothing like a machine learning or AI at the time. It was all like a classic like algorithms and that type of thing. So we did learn AI in bachelor's at Air University as well. There was actually a course called Artificial Intelligence. And then in master's as well, learned a little more about AI. But at the time, the core neural networks approach wasn't quite in. So the AI was a lot of like just the research. So there were no like real life application that you would see and get inspired from. So a lot of the AI, I think, was just the research and theoretical, all that.
As you explained your journey with how masters went for you, I want to ask, how was the change like moving from Pakistan to Germany, moving from like a Southeast Asian country to Europe? What was the shift like?
It was a very big shift. Obviously, first time going to Europe, grew up in Pakistan, all our, the values and how we think about things and culture was very different. So that kind of like everything seemed strange at the time. People like how people understood concepts or the cultural values were so much different. So it was like a lot of like learning curve to kind of learn all those things. But it was
Right.
interesting learning new things. One of the example, there were some other students, even from India, in our class, and we would get surprised from the culture. How, in Pakistan, the parents and the kids' relationship is very different, where usually parents pay for the kids and they pay for their school and their education. And, if you have to buy something, you just ask your dad and they gives you the money and you buy, right? That's how it works. And over there, it's very individualistic culture. As soon as your kids go like 18, parents says, okay, you're on your own. So that part was so odd to us. One time I remember we were in class and then we were talking about some movie. And then the teacher said that if someone has that movie, it'll be great that we should just watch in the class. And then one girl, she said, "Yeah, I think my dad has that movie in his collection. So maybe I'll go and then rent it from him." I was like, what? You rent it from your dad a movie? So there, like these type of things was very interesting. So it was interesting learning all those things.
See, all right. I want to ask, when you were doing your masters in Germany, did you work part time somewhere, or did you work with the university or somewhere?
Yes.
How did that go?
Yeah, I actually maybe after few months in the university, I started looking for jobs as a student jobs. So I applied for a couple of places. I actually had a really good during my bachelor's. I did a lot of like programming and bunch of internships. So I had like a good resume of projects that I could share. So I applied at a couple of places and then got offer from both of them. So I picked a research center. It was called Spatial and AI Research. at University of Bremen. So they were looking for a software engineer. So they do research, and then in their research, they need to develop some applications to help the research process, right? So that's why they were looking for an engineer. So I applied and got the job, and it was actually excellent. Really good experience. They pay really well, and then very flexible because you're a student. So if you have an exam, you don't come, and it was like, I don't know, 20 hours a week, which wasn't that much. So that was actually a very good experience learning and getting some money to, live there.
After your experience working with this logistic company, where did you end up, and what was it like working as a software engineer? I mean, we hear that you go on from this learning step to the next step, which is when you start working, you become a software engineer, or you work as an analyst, or maybe you're working on the development team. It's like, oh, encompassing all of it, what do you like, what is it like working as a software engineer?
It wasn't very different actually. My When I did my internships in Pakistan, you have a problem, and then you're building some software, right, to solve that problem. And I was working as an intern, as a part-time job at the university. Similar thing, building software for some problem. And I switched to the full-time job. It was actually very, very similar, not that much different, but then the responsibility and the accountability goes higher, because now you're not like building software for research, but now this software is actually going to be used for actual customers or the companies. So the quality bar has to be higher. The validation and the detail that you go into has to be higher, right? So there, those aspects start coming in, and then you have to think about the documentation, the errors, and the user, and the all type of scenarios they will run into. So it just becomes more comprehensive. And that's all like part of learning process. So I didn't feel like it too much difference when I switched to a full-time job. It was still like writing code.
Fascinating. Acha, after your journey here and beyond, after this, where did you end up, and what was it like?
Uh, I worked there for about a year, and then around that time I got married, and my wife was from Toronto. I see you have a Toronto in uh, in your background in your picture.
Yeah.
So she first moved to Frankfurt with me, and we lived there. But there was a language barrier, and then initially it was fine, but then over time you get the mail and you understand what's what's written in German and all that. So we decided to move to Canada. So then I applied, and then we moved to Canada just because of the family reason mainly. We were enjoying there, but then there was a little bit of uh, the language barrier problem, and then my wife was working in Canada. She took 1 year off, and they said, "Okay, I have to go and join my job back. So let's just go back to Toronto." So that's how we decided to go there.
So the jump from Germany to Canada. I mean, I want to ask, from Pakistan to Germany, and then from Germany to Canada, seeing already किस तरह आपका एक shift था, moving from Pakistan to Europe, and then from Europe to America. What was it like?
Some of the differences are from Europe to America. I mean, the continent and the Canada as a country was an event there. It was very different. In Europe, everything is tight, you know. Everyone lives in kind of apartments, and the streets are tight, and it's very busy. In If you go to USA or Canada, everything is big. You go, the streets, highways are so huge, the houses are big, and everything is like cars are bigger. You go inside the house, the appliances are bigger, the fridge size is so huge. So
Oh,
that's the
interesting.
first thing I felt like, oh, everything is so big. So that kind of correlates with the size of the land mass that the continent has. So, but the other cultural thing was the Canada and US is more. immigrant-friendly countries because most people are immigrants. So you kind of feel like more welcome. You don't feel like the odd person. So in Germany, it's more like there are mainly Germans live there, and there's some immigrants. So you kind of go stand out more. And then there are some like a little bit of racism here and there, not in generally, but like some people individually express sometimes some racist remarks that you don't find in Canada when you go there. Everyone is very welcoming, and then you can feel like, oh, this is your country. Like you can relate to it. Versus in Germany, you can never relate to that. That's your country. So that was like a one difference I found. And then the other
Nobody
thing
is
was
feeling more welcome
the
in Canada.
the
Hmm.
yeah, in Canada they're like so many desis, so the food, all the desi food. So I was kind of deprived
Feeling
of
more
good
welcome.
deprived of good desi food living in Germany. When I moved to Canada, I'm like, oh, nice, so many restaurants.
Interesting. Acha, so when you moved to Canada, where did you work and how did you resume back the journey there?
Yeah, I started in Toronto, started looking for jobs. I got some offers. Then I applied for another job that was in actually Alberta, which is like in the Western Canada. Uh, there, I applied for a job and then did the interview. I got an offer. So the pay in Alberta was booming at the time. There was an oil-based industry, so they were like booming like crazy. So the pays are much higher compared to Toronto. So I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going for more pay. So we kind of like a move to Edmonton in Alberta. So that's where my first job was. That was with the University of Alberta as a senior software engineer. And soon after, I just worked there for a few months. And because I kind of initiated the job finding application process, so in a couple of months, I got another call from Government of Alberta. And then I did interview there and then got the offer. That was again a lead senior engineer to work in their pensions department with the government of Alberta. I'm like, oh, that's cool. This is a government job, you know. You have like this in Pakistan, the government job is supposed to be good. So I thought, okay, let's try that. It was actually really good and very good experience. Learned a lot. So yeah, that was still like in continuing my software engineering journey as a senior engineer there.
See. Acha, so you worked in this company working on this, and then being a senior engineer and also working on project management. What was it like shifting more from the software engineering role towards the project management? I mean, what's more different there?
Uh, it's I think the main difference is you start to take like more ownership of the problem overall versus some individual pieces that you may be assigned to as part of the team.
See.
So then you work more towards, okay, what is the product that we're trying to build? What is the user experience? And then why are we building this? And then what is the expectation from customer or whoever is building? And then kind of managing that, making sure managing resources, timeline, and also participating in the architecture. How should we build it? How to make some decisions, like which database to use, how should we the architecture or design the classes, and then the all the aspects of the software engineering. So you start taking like a more ownership, and then some pieces you start giving to other
See.
people, and then you're more connected to the senior leadership. So you have to kind of report back, how's your project going, and then why did you make this decision and that decision? Yeah, you're more engaged with the upper upper leadership.
So you worked as a software engineer at this company you talked about in working on Alberta. Now I want to ask, what where did the inspiration, knowing that you're working at Apple in the AI and ML space as a lead, I want to ask, where did this inspiration come from? I
Yeah,
mean, if I look at myself, we have so many overwhelming options right now.
yeah,
One day there's blockchain, another day there's AI. And in
yes.
AI, you're learning something out of nowhere. Oh, look, generative AI, a new space.
Yeah.
I mean, in that time, where did this inspiration come from, basically?
Uh, Actually, I mean, as I said, the we had some like theoretical background just because of studying the computer science, but it never like took too much interest in this because, as I said, it was very like a research topic at the time. I think around 2014, I started seeing like more and more applications of machine learning and AI. Like Amazon Alexa was released, Siri was released. I started seeing a lot of application in mail filters and image recognition, text to speech applications, and then I started taking more interest in machine learning and understanding what is this new thing, and then looked it up and then kind of tried to understand how it works, what is the mathematics behind it. Not too deep, just at the very high level, and that kind of like understanding what's happening. But still, I my main focus at the time was core application development, serverless architecture, cloud computing, all of that. So I didn't go any like a deeper into it. So in 2016, a recruiter from Amazon Alexa team reached out, and then they said, "Okay, we have some position in Alexa team. Will you be interested in talking to us?" And I looked into. I'm like, "Okay, that's very cool," and
Interesting.
that's kind of sparked my interest from that point. So then I'm like, "Okay, what is this Alexa? How does it work? What are these speech recognition models? How do they work?" At that point, then I started my engagement with the recruitment team. I started getting like more into uh, anything I could learn, like, start searching, reading all the papers and articles and the YouTube. I started taking some courses, the free courses on Audacity or Coursera, and started kind of building my own models to understand like how this works. What is the mathematics behind it? What is the linear algebra behind it? So can I have a better understanding? So fortunately, I went through the interview process and I got the offer. So I moved from there to USA, and then the rest was just on the job learning. So then once you were like dropped there, and then working with all these scientists, and they're building models. So then all of that is like on the job learning. So you have to know and learn, not just like do what you're supposed to do, but also at the same time in parallel learn what is this thing you encounter. You keep encountering like new thing. What is this? Okay, let me understand that. Okay, what is this? So you're kind of your learning as it keeps growing as you work on those projects. So then the rest of it was just like on the job learning. And then after uh, 3 years with the Alexa team, then I got an offer from Apple, so I kind of moved over there to the Siri team, Siri and Search team. So then started working on some other interesting ML-based projects over there. Yeah, so it was just like a mostly on the job learning.
All right, interesting. All right, हम आते हैं इस एप्पल पर एक्सक्लूसिवली इस पर भी बात करते हैं. I wanna ask, what was it like working for Amazon, jumping from different companies and then to like a proper Silicon Valley company and like being part of the big giants? What was the work culture like in Amazon?
Yeah, I think Amazon was there was a little bit of learning curve there for me. So when I joined, I initially like, okay, what did I do? Why did I come here? It's very, very challenging, very fast pace, very high expectations. So it was quite a bit of like a learning curve for me to adopt to this new pace of the work environment and the work culture. Like in Canada, like another thing was people are very nice in generally, right? Yeah, they uh, even if they don't agree with you, they say it very nicely.
Okay, very,
They
very polite.
sugarcoat it and then and say it in a way that kind of gives you point it out, and then versus in Silicon Valley. this is wrong. What the F this is? People feedback is like a very harsh, and I'm like, why is this person talking like this? So it was a little bit of a learning curve, and then you kind of like you learn, you adjust, you adopt. So that was good for me to kind of like uh, get through this kind of machine to sharpen my skills and then adapt to this new way of working. So it was very tough, very tight timelines. There's a lot of work. So you have to, for example, in Canada, there's a concept of work hours. So you work from this hour to that hour. And if your company asks you to work more, that's considered overtime. And you get paid more for the overtime. It's like the labor kind of the laws and regulations in Canada. In US, there's no such thing as that. Okay, there's this project that you have to deliver. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You have to work all nighters, like yeah, you have to do that. So it was very different, the culture and the environment. But I think it was good. Overall, it was good. It was challenging and difficult in the beginning, but then overall, you learn and then you figure out. So it
Interesting.
it kind of sharpens you, and then yeah, any type of learning is good for you.
Fascinating. Makes sense. True, true. I didn't want to ask, working on the Alexa team, you guys worked on machine learning models, or did you guys work mainly on speech recognition? Like, what was it like? Like me being not knowing so much about it. What was it like? Like, how would you explain it to me, like, in layman terms?
Yeah. So I actually, as I said, as I kind of moved into the job, I kind of started learning because without knowing how everything works, you just cannot survive. So
True.
I started taking a lot of courses. I started learning. I started building my own models, and then so I had to know it was a very technical role. So I had to know everything in detail. And there was a university within the Amazon. They call it Amazon Machine Learning University. So I signed up there for deep learning and speech recognition program. So it just runs just like a college type thing where they have courses, you take classes, you give exams and things like that. So I
So was
signed
this
up
like
for
an
that.
institution sort of place where you were
Yeah,
learning?
institution within for employees to
Oh,
to
it's just-
employees to kind of like give them skills if they don't have. And then you just like, as I said, as you encounter, then you learn. So I didn't have the role where I myself had to build models. So there were other scientists and engineers who were assigned to build all those models. But my role was to lead the very large projects to, okay, next speech recognition model for Alexa or next speech recognition model for Amazon AWS Lex. There's this new service they're launching. They need to recognize the speech, and we have to deliver a model. Okay, let's build it. Or we're launching a new Echo device for kids, and we have to build a new model that's better for kids. How do you do that? So then my job was to kind of like a lead, figure out a plan, develop requirements, figure out who needs to be involved, and then how long it's going to take, and then solution, work with the teams, engineers and scientists to figure out all the details, and then get those people start working on it, start tracking, are they doing their job, having regular kind of meetings with them to kind of track if this is happening or not, start reporting to the leadership that what's our progress. So that kind of thing, the role I had. And then I had to learn how things work
Knowing that learning is part of the journey, you always have to
and
learn
what
at
the
whatever
journey.
point you are. True, true.
Yeah.
I want to ask, knowing that you had to learn when you were learning, I mean, there's a stereotype that when you get into data science or any field of AI, whether that's machine learning, deep learning, or machine learning, we often hear this stereotype of, okay, you need a lot of maths for AI. How would you say that? Because you were learning on the job
Yeah, yeah,
at.
yeah. I don't think you need, depending on what you're doing, these days, I don't think you need to learn a lot of math. It's the what math does is it kind of helps uh, build the concept in your head. Like what is if you see a term linear regression, like you, okay, what is happening? Why did I get this value? Like, what is driving this thing, right? Or you hear another algorithm name, the cost function. Like, what is the cost function? There could be a concept, but if you have like some understanding, then it's always just like a computer science. Like, let's use analogy of computer science. They start with this fundamentals, like they start teaching you what the binary system is, how the assembly language works, how the compiler works, how your instruction get translated, and then how does it run on the microprocessor, and then you can kind of like visualize in your head as a concept, right? When okay, you're building an application, you're rendering something on the screen, what's really happening, right? So you don't need to know that to write another like a program or a software, but if you know it, you kind of feel so much better, right? That you know, okay, why this is happening, right? Why these pixels are drawn on the screen, or what happens when I type on the keyboard, right? So if you know that things behind the scene, it kind of helps, and you can feel better, you can reason it better. But it's not like a core requirement. If you want to build a machine learning model to train something, you have a problem, you have this thing. There are pre-built models. They're like, if you just have to fine-tune things, you can do all of those things without understanding. But if you are somebody who likes to get deeper and try to reason why something is this way, then it's like you buy a car and then you just start driving. You
Just
don't know, okay, why is like engine, what does engine do? Or when I turn the steering wheel, like why does the tire turn? If you want to think about that, then you need to know what the mechanics are underneath, right? So it's up to the person, I guess, really, what you're trying to do. It's
I
not
mean,
a
I'm
requirement. It's not a
a friend
requirement.
developer myself, and like I'm interested in this field because I was always, for the longest time, curious about how all of this is working and how machine learning models in itself are working. But at the same time, I'm like intimidated by the math. Whoever I hear from, they're like, no, you have to have a lot of logic and reasoning. I mean, which is obvious, and like you have to have logic and reasoning even for computer science, and for basic
Yeah,
understanding it's quite obvious. But for like machine learning, I'm on that path where I'm trying to
yeah,
learn
yeah.
and trying to
Right, right.
transition. It's
Yeah.
intimidating that
I
I
would
think
say, I would say that uh, people should not start from the math. If you start from the math, you're taking a path that's much more difficult, and then you're not going to succeed. Your learning curve is going to be a lot more steeper. So if instead of starting from the math, you start from using the models, you start from building some model and then start trying some applications. But as you encounter some issues, as you encounter some problems, and then you want to know, okay, why can I not improve accuracy, or what is this thing? And then you just learn that one thing a little bit more deeper, and then okay, now I figured out this. Maybe later in a few months you will encounter something else, and then you'll say, okay, why is this curve going this way? Or why I added more data and then the model didn't work, or some other detail. Then you can start investigating that one thing, right? It'll become much more easier, and then math won't kind of become an obstacle in your path to learn the machine learning or AI.
interesting. The As you talked about Apple, I wanted to come back on that. So what was it like transitioning from one giant Amazon to Apple? I mean, Apple in itself, a big name.
Yeah, it's a big name, and sometimes uh, the when you're working, it's not that much different. It just feels like it's like if you live in Pakistan and then you live in US, but if you're living in Pakistan, you think, oh, this US is such a huge country and blah blah blah. But when you move here, you move into a house, and then I'm in this room. And this room is not that much different room than what you are in right now. That's also a room, right? And we're just having a conversation, right? And then it's a different country, all that. But end of the day, at the ground level, you're
Hmm.
still working. People are still writing code. People are still focused on certain things. So I don't think I didn't feel like too much. different switching. Obviously, company cultures are different. So Amazon culture is very different than Apple culture. The values are different. There are different things that they value. Like in Apple, they value design a lot. They want to make sure the customer experience is very, very high. Has bar is very high, versus Amazon, the bar is not as high. Their priority is more delivering more iteratively, versus Apple is don't want to do too much iterations. We want to do all those iterations internally, and when we ship something to customer, it has to be very high value at a very high quality, right? There's like a slight difference in culture. So they don't care, oh, we did it and didn't work, or it didn't pass the quality. Let's do it next year. We're not going to ship with these bugs in the system or whatever you're building. We'll ship next year. Let's spend more time on making it better. So that's kind of like a different culture. And in Amazon, there's a culture of doing a lot of things. It's very like a high velocity, high throughput type environment. So they're working on a lot of things, and all of those things are important, right? That's why everyone is so busy. In Apple,
Yes.
the culture is slightly different, where they like to focus on few things. Say, okay, let's not do everything. I know there are so many things we can do. Let's just decide and then work on the most important thing. Let's see what is the most important thing, and then pick one or two most important things, and then put all our energy, all our effort, and then focus on those things. So
So
that's kind of like a different culture. You do less things, but then you you focus a lot on that one problem, and then your quality bar is very high. So you can iterate and try to meet that quality bar, and then with very focused effort. So
I
that's kind
mean,
of
maybe
like a slight
has their
different in the company
hmm,
culture.
Apple has their own like philosophy and
Their
on
own
how
philosophy, yeah.
they're based on philosophy and how they want to make focus on one thing and make it perfect. So like it's
Make it
very
very good, yeah.
and like
Yeah,
very there's no like
exactly.
the end user doesn't have to focus on like how
Yeah, I
why is
know.
this messed up or why is this working this way, like completely
Yeah.
human experience.
For
Makes sense.
example, we launched Vision Pro this year.
Hmm.
Uh, we every year, it's not like it's launched this year. It was planned to launch several years earlier. So even 2 years ago, we had a date that, okay, we're going to launch this year. Okay, so many things not meeting the expectation. It's not hitting the quality bar that we need. Okay, let's do it next year. Another year passed by, and then everyone is working and then fixing all those problems. And that's okay. It's still not good. let's let's launch this next year. So it's been delaying several years. Even this year, we launched it, announced it, but we didn't ship it. We said, okay, it's still not shippable.
Still has 6 months.
We still need, we still
Hmm.
need like so much work to make sure when people actually experience it, they they don't run into any trouble or errors or bugs, and the experience should be very, very smooth. So that's why they really like to take their time.
Interesting, interesting. So, Zed, you talked about Siri and working on the Siri team. What was it like working for Siri and like seeing it incrementally improve? And I mean, how would you explain this journey?
Uh, the because I in Amazon worked on Amazon Alexa, and then moving to Siri, very similar product. It's just like a different platform. So the transition was easy for me. Same concept, same models, same kind of pipeline of the models. You have your invocation models where you have the trigger phrase. You do have to do the speech recognition. You have to do natural language understanding, and you have to process the request. Similar kind of product. When I joined Apple, the I was hired to my very first project was move Siri from server to on the phone. So Apple is, as you know, is big on privacy and like to do things a lot more private, care about the customer privacy.
Makes sense.
So Siri used to run on server. So when you talk to Siri, your audio goes to server, which even though they delete it, but they don't like it that, okay, it goes up to the server, right? So the project was figure out a way to move the entire Siri product on device. That was my
Yes.
very first project. So initially it was like, okay, it's not possible. You can't do that. It's just so huge. It's a monster model, not just one model, like 15 models doing different things. And it's such a huge footprint. There's no way we can fit it on the device. So okay, everything's possible, end of the day. So
Interesting.
I started that journey and then started pulling together the teams and started breaking down the problem and then what do we need to do? Started running the prototypes and then experiments and then leading all that effort for 1 year. And after 1 year, guess what? We were able to run the entire Siri on device. We didn't launch it, but we had the fully working prototype working on device. We had to build new architecture, had to solve all these new problems that didn't exist on the server and now exist on the device. And then you have to worry about the power and how much battery it uses, how much energy it consumes. Is it going to heat up the phone or, all those problems? And is it fast enough? Is the same latency as the server? You have to figure out all those problems and how we're going to update our
A lot of
model.
parameters.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that was my kind of like the first project. And a year later, we shipped the Siri on device. And right now, if you have an iPhone, you talk to Siri. Majority of your requests, they're just processed on device. They work on device.
In
A lot
some
more
cases,
private.
it time. So it's very helpful. I mean, I use it every day on my phone as well.
Yeah.
इसमें मेरा एक और सवाल है. Since me being Pakistani, you being Pakistani, and working on the Siri team, I want to ask, Urdu में Siri कब आएगा? Can we have some
Yeah.
also?
I think the one of the way how the company looks at this problem, like we deal with this all the time. I am the one actually ended up prioritizing some of the languages, which language we have to pick and not pick. The way we look at it, because it's an investment, right? To bring Siri into a new language costs a lot of money because we need to collect lots of data for these models, for speech models, for invocation models, for language models, for so many different types of there's entities and the names and the locations and so many things that we have to collect data. It's very expensive. It costs millions and tens of millions of dollars to bring Siri to a new language. Uh, then the company looks at, okay, how much revenue are we getting from that country? How many Apple devices are being sold in that country, right? So we look at that, okay, and then we sort from that and see, is there enough return on investment if we spend like, let's say, 15, 20 millions just on the data and then the team engineers time, that's another maybe 100 million. So spending all that money, are we going to get the return? Are we selling enough iPhones in Pakistan? Unfortunately, we're not. So that's the main
No.
reason. We at some point, if people start buying a lot of Apple products in Pakistan, and then it'll start showing up, and then the ROI will change, and then we'll say, okay, yes, we should work on bringing Siri in Urdu. By the way, we do have Hindi, which is very close to Urdu. So if you switch
I
in
was thinking
your
the same if we could work on Hindi and like have some parts of it besides the transcription and like converting it into Urdu, but like in listening
yeah,
and speaking, I mean, it's very similar, but at the same time, it makes sense.
it's
Demand and
different.
supply.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, that's the main reason.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Acha, so you talked about Vision Pro. I want to ask, did you work on it or what part of it
Yeah.
did you work on?
So I worked on Siri, obviously. So we had to integrate Siri into the Vision Pro. Uh, so my specific part was we wanted to make sure in this new device platform, uh, because there's no mouse, there's no keyboard. There could be, but that's not, if you're wearing it, you're not like looking for keyboard and mouse. Uh, Sometimes you just want to use your voice. Some things are just done so much faster with voice. Siri, do
Exactly.
this, right? So we wanted to bring Siri, and we knew that there's a friction in Siri when you use on the phone, which is different. You say, "Hey Siri, do this," and then every time you have to ask, "Hey Siri." So we start building on these new features. Okay, I think we need to remove hey from the Siri. That's the first thing we need to do because it's very inconvenient. It's not as natural, If you're going to use Siri a lot when you're wearing this headset, it's got to be easier. The other thing is uh, when you have the Siri there, you're doing different things, and then you may want to use Siri to do certain things. You want to say, close this window or uh, open this other app. And you don't want to say, Siri, open this, Siri, do that. So you don't want to, that's not how you talk, to other people. If
Makes
I'm
sense.
talking to you, don't use your name all the time. So we wanted to build this feature which keeps the Siri there. And then Siri has to figure out if user is talking, is it talking to Siri or not? So we had to build this feature back to back. So if you invoke it once, it stays there and it doesn't go away. And you can just talk to it. And whenever you need it, you say, close this app, or then you have somebody sitting next to you and then talk to that person. But that's not for Siri. So you should figure out when you're talking to it and when you're not. So we had to build this brand new model, which job was to figure out uh, when user is talking to the device and when user is not talking to the device. Or someone else may, shout something from the back, and then that's not somebody talking to the Siri. So we had to build these new technology models based on the acoustic information and the language and a lot of these other signals where person is looking, all that, to decide is it user is talking to the Siri. So that was the main thing there. So we built it for the Vision Pro first, and then realized I think let's bring it to the iPhone and other. So actually this year in iOS 17 we just launched
Which
the
is really
same those
close.
two
About a day
features
or two.
for a bunch of other devices. Yeah.
Say. So I wanna ask, how is it right now? I mean, iOS 17 is right around the corner, and as you said, Siri, the new feature is coming to it, and you worked on that. So, which is really fascinating. I found out about the feature in the keynote, and like I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then one day I saw your post. I was like, oh, this is so fascinating. Seeing a Pakistani working on a
Yeah,
feature or working at Apple and like using a device, and then you realize the person working behind it, it's really humbling. So I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
ask regarding that, okay, like iOS 17 is close and like it must be a really tight and packed schedule. How is it going at in the fast paced environment and like
Yeah,
incremental like,
it's it was amazing. Very, very, my last year was super busy because of this. Very, very big project, very vast because you're not launching it for one device. If you want to remove Hey from the Siri, we want to do it for all the devices. Like I have AirPods on, and they have such a small chip, right? So small, so tiny. And then if I say Siri, it should listen to it and then respond to it. And then if I have a watch, I can say the same thing. Or there's so many like different devices in Apple ecosystem, and we had to make it work for all of the devices, right? So that was very challenging. So whatever you do in one device doesn't translate to the other. It's a complete new problem. Okay, we have tiny, tiny memory, very small battery. You don't want to consume battery because you're listening for this key phrase 24/7 if you have the AirPods on the whole time. And it should not heat up, it should not use that much battery, yet it has to be accurate and fast. So you have to
makes sense.
solve all these trade-offs together. So it was very, very difficult and very challenging. But I'm really like glad and fortunate that we're able to ship it so many times. Okay, I mean, until like April, we're like, I don't know, we can ship it. It doesn't look like. But
Makes
eventually we kind of nailed it. It was very, 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 very complex, very large project, very cross-functional effort from people across the Apple. Uh, we had to work with the chip team, because we have to optimize the processing and the memory usage and all of those things to make it work, to ship to a quality that is seamless. It's not like
makes
you're saying Siri and it's not listening, right? Or it's a false triggering all the time. It's very difficult because when you say hey, it's much easier problem because hey Siri, or when you say hey Google or Alexa, these are not the words that are found in everyday language, right? They don't have a similarity, similar acoustic or linguistic similarity, right? But the Siri is a two-syllable word, and then it has acoustic and linguistic similarity with so many words. Seriously, it has the first part called Siri, right?
I mean,
People have
someone calling
name.
me Sherry sometimes. This thing happens with me a lot. Someone's calling me Sherry. Where are you, Sherry? Kidhar
Yes,
ho?
Siri. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
exactly.
like, I'm like, wait. I'm wearing my headphones, and I'm like, who's talking to me? What's happening? And then I realize Siri is calling someone. I'm like,
Yeah,
now it
yeah,
depends on. First it was Hey Siri. Now it's like Siri. Then literally every day. Maybe if it's
yeah.
more seamless or not, we'll have to see that.
Yeah, yeah, that was the challenge, right? You have to bring your accuracy to a point where it's shippable. So there's going to be some false triggers like that, but we don't want them to be irregular. There may be like one a month, maybe. We don't want to have you have one every day, right? So we're improving. I think in soon in the next couple of updates, it'll get way better. So the when you upgrade your to iOS 17, you'll see your Siri problem will get much better. The new model is much better than previous one.
That will be great. All right, Zed. So you worked on the team with Siri, and now you've also worked with Vision Pro. I want to ask, as you were working with Vision Pro, what was it like? And I want to ask, knowing like if you're using your MacBook or any laptop or like phone, like your interface is like you use the keyboard, you use the mouse, or you wear the headphones, or maybe you're using your phone. It's a touch-based phone. I mean, like there are so many parameters to control it. And like यहाँ पर अगर हम बात करें Vision Pro की, it's like a completely new way of computing. Like
Yes.
when I was seeing the keynote myself, I was like, how will this work and how will this seem natural?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
how did it seem to you? Like
Oh,
going
it's
from keyboard and completely like it's now handheld and like you have to use your hand
yeah,
and you're speaking to it. What was it like?
yeah. It's actually really interesting. I've used it so many times. Uh, it's There was a little bit of adjustment in the beginning because of the headset, because I'm not used to wearing something on top of my eyes. So when I wear it, like after an hour or so, when I remove it, you can feel like, okay, something, okay, you're back to something. You feel a little bit lighter. So there's a little bit of that. There's a learning curve there. But when you are in it, it's so immersive. It's so like there's such a big wow factor. Even whenever, like, even I've been using it for a long time now, it just feels so surreal that how everything is working together and then delivering this experience. It's very cool device, very, very cool device. The things that you can do with it, the eye tracking is so fast. This new interface, wherever you look, and then you just tap your finger. It's so much less work if I compare that with the keyboard and the mouse. You have to move the mouse, and then a lot of your muscles get used. And uh, eyes are so fast, actually. You move mouse from this part of the screen to that, it has a latency. Your eyes are super fast. You can just so quickly look at that cross button and then just click that, and it's already gone. Right? Its interface is so much faster compared to your other, and the effort level that you have. And then you don't have to like hold your hand like that, or wherever your hand is. It could be resting on your lap or on your chair. You can just click like that and it'll work. So like the whole interface is very seamless. It's actually very cool to use Vision Pro for work, like bringing your Mac in there and then using the real keyboard with that. So you can wear a Vision Pro and then have the real keyboard connect through the Bluetooth and
Fascinating.
then work on your apps. And now you can have your apps everywhere. You can have a window here, window there, window up, window down, wherever you can like bring your unlimited screen, kind of like not unlimited, but very large screen that you have access to. You can push things in the back and the front. The very interesting dynamics. of working this new way.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, this is something when I saw it for the first time, I was like, the thought that came to my mind was like, this is something completely new. Maybe this like I started to compare it with the first time Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, and I kept wondering, is this the new iPhone or is this the new thing? So like I want to ask you, since you've used this device, I mean it's still not available for the public. I mean soon, at the time of this
Next
video
year.
when everyone's watching it, it might be out. So I want to ask, like, do you think that this is like the future of computing, like the way people thought mobile and like mobile handheld experience would be the future, but at the same time it's like i- in parallel chal raha hai. We're using our
Right.
laptops, or we're using a phone is like an
Um,
extension to ourselves, like we use it daily. And like, what do you think in terms of that about the Vision Pro?
yeah, I don't think we think of it that way. First of all, that this is the new thing and everything phones will be replaced by this, all that. You never know, and it's to predict future is really difficult. You don't know what's going to happen in 10 years from now, how people are going to change and shift and adopt. But at least we're not thinking that way. It's a new modality, it's a new platform, new device, just like you have iPad, you have a Mac, you have everything has a different purpose. So there's going to be this new platform, it's going to create its own space. It's not a type of device that everyone would be buying, very expensive, first of all, right? But it has its own use cases, it has its own niche. And as the use cases develop and evolve, it might become very big that you might realize in 5 years from now that a lot of people would want it. But initially, I think that's not how we're thinking. It's more like use case based. So why do you need it? The biggest use case is entertainment, right? People buy their home theaters at home, like large screen, the really good speaker system, or very large TVs, right? They want to have very immersive experience. They buy 3D TVs, all those things, right? They want to have entertainment. They go to movie theaters, watch movies. If you buy a Vision Pro, you can have all of that in one device, right? And you can have as big screen as you want, right? You can have a 200 feet big screen. You can have 3D content in there. That's like a one use case. If somebody's really into entertainment, you want to watch like games, basketball games, you can watch like 3D in stadium, watch basketball games, very immersive movies. It's the entertainment, right? Someone is not into entertainment, I don't care. I'll just go to theater, watch movie. Not for them, right? Similarly, if you, the other big use case is the office work. So you go to work, and then after time, people see if you go look, some of the engineers, they have like, these four very large screen. One is vertical, one is horizontal, one is on this side. Or if you see some of these stock traders, they have these 10 screens going all over the place, right? They have this specific use case, right? Or you're working at work where you want to have a call, and then you want to have a screen here, and you want to have something else going down there. You want to have a lot of information there. You want to feel like very flexible and agile what you do. So there you have a use case. So instead of buying all those 10 monitors, just buy one device, and then you get all of those things, and then they're flexible, they're virtual. You can bring them anywhere, put them anywhere. It's very high quality, so the resolution is very high, so it's very readable. So that's the other use case. Gaming could be another use case where you want to have augmented reality games.
Hmm.
That market doesn't exist today because there are no such devices. But that's another kind of emerging market. Like
More immersive games.
if you and I are in the same room, and then we both have the headset, and imagine if we want to play a board game instead of like a classic board game, you can have a virtual board game. And then now this board game has unlimited possibilities. Your characters, they will be more real on the table. You will have very interactive characters that you can move from one place to another, right? They could have animation, they could have a lot more sound than the your board game all of a sudden, which is the real thing. And maybe you can buy a board, just like a board, and then everything on it is virtual. So it could generate these new gaming type use cases. But I don't think it's one of those things where people say, oh, you won't need iPhone, or this is just the new thing. People will just wear this 24/7 on their heads, and that's the new way of living. I don't think that's the case. It's
It's
very
quite
use case. It's very use case based. It's like you you go to a mode. Like I want to watch movie. I change my mindset. I go to a living room and I play a TV. Now in my entertainment TV watching mode, right? And then when I'm not doing that, then I'm out. And now I go to work, I'm in my working mode, at the work mode. So it's very use case driven. Okay, then I can wear it, and then when I'm done, I can remove it. It's more like that.
fascinating, the way you talked about it. Just like when you said about the board game, so you're sitting in California, I'm sitting in Pakistan, Islamabad, and like just imagining it like the board in front of me, and you're playing the game, I'm playing the game. It's the real world. I'm
Yeah.
communicating with you. In itself, that sounds very fascinating. Like when I was watching that keynote, I saw it for the first time. I showed it to my mother. She was like, "No, she's not very tech savvy, but she's like, this seems something very sci-fi." She told me about
Same.
she used to watch Star Trek, and like this sort of immersive experience used to be in that show. And I kept wondering, like, living in this generation and being Gen Z and starting to see that thing that people talk about, like it's that's such sci-fi experience and we're living in it. I mean, me here communicating with you, we often undermine and underestimate the thing
Yeah,
that now we have with the internet. So that's really interesting and fascinating. Acha, all right,
absolutely.
I want to ask another question about how you see we live in this new age. We have different immersive experience, AR, VR. We have spatial computing. Apple is touting this new experience, the next thing, which is spatial computing after desktop computing, and like personal computing, we're on to another level. And like at the same time, we're seeing this emerging trend in AI, generative space, GPT. I mean, when we talk about GPT, the way it has penetrated every market, every industry is now not relying on it, but we can say using it as assistance, and like seeing how work is being transformed and how different fascinating concepts, and like it's in the education industry. I mean, Khan Academy is doing something great about it. Different, we even hear about music, generative music, which is really fascinating. Like, what do you think how the future will be in terms of generative? I mean, everything's being generative and generative. We hear this a lot, and it's quite
Yeah, I
fascinating.
know. Yeah, I know. I'm not some like a future predictor type person. So I don't know where things are gonna go, but as knowing, being in the industry, having very deeper understanding of what these things are, where they're going, uh, I I think this is one of those huge shift in technology. It's kind of like a similar to the start of the internet, right? Like early 2000, huge change. Google came, and then so many things happened. It's one of those major shifts that can change, or the introduction of mobile phone that just changed everything, right? It's one of those huge shift. Uh, what would happen? No one knows. Everyone can predict. Some will be right, some will be wrong. But I
Ex-
think this is a real thing, and it's gonna bring huge amount of change that is actually difficult to imagine at this time. What the change would be. The changes would be, obviously there'll be a lot of good things. It can improve a lot of the applications or tools or things that we use to make our lives better. Also, every positive things bring the negative side.
Makes
The
sense.
negative things will be equally more powerful. The hacks or the frauds or the fake news will be equally more powerful using the technology. But then the impact on the jobs, I think, is going to be very huge. So the type of work that exists today may not exist in 7 or 10 or years from now. So people will have to adopt to new what they should be doing. So it's a journey. We'll see what happens. Any technology, when it starts, there is a very huge hype, but the what actually gets delivered is much lower.
Makes
And then
sense.
people start setting their expectations, aligning their expectation. But then there is this trajectory which happens over the years, right? It's one of those things very huge. People are thinking, okay, in next 2 years we'll get to where we will be in 10 years. That may not be the case, but then we will get there, but it might take a little bit longer than people might think. But it's a huge change. It'll change how you learn, how the school system works. Employment is, I think, is the largest impact. The type of work people do, because it's impacting like it can generate code, right? It can it can like using generative AI, you can uh, deliver same amount of work that you would need 10 engineers with one engineer, right? So the other nine are just generating code through AI. Like one person is maybe in charge, quality check, making sure what to do, and then how to orchestrate this thing. But at the same time, the benefit is the type of application that you can build today are constrained by number of engineers you have available. Everything I said costs money, right? If you build something, it costs money. You need people, you need everything. So your cost goes down. That means you can now do all those things that you couldn't do before. So that's good. So there is this, we'll see what happens in future. Some people predict that, oh, the demand for the work, the today's work will go down. I think there is some truth to it. But
Makes
people will
sense.
start, like if today I have a money and resources to do two projects, right? Tomorrow with the generative AI, with the same money and resources, I could start 50 projects or maybe 10 projects, right? I will still need the same amount of people. I'm just delivering more, right? So there's that
Exactly.
aspect. There's that aspect. So we will also see that. We'll also see the other side where some company, based on the cost constraints, they might see, okay, we don't need these extra people. So the people, companies, some companies might lay off those people. Some other companies might then rehire them. That okay, now we have resources and money to do so many things. We actually need more people. So we'll
Makes
see where things go, but it's a huge shift. So
makes
I
sense.
think for students, for people like you, should pay attention to it, learn what's happening, see where you can use in your work. So I guess whatever the work you're going to be doing in 5 years is going to be using some sort of generative AI model somewhere in the stack. So knowing those, learning how they work, what you can do, what are the pros and cons, what are the details about it is going to help you. And we'll see what happens. No one knows.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, times are changing, and so are the requirements, and the dynamics are changing with time. Actually, Zaid, I want to ask you, as you talked about this experience, and like you have this wide range of experience in Germany, in Pakistan, in Canada, and then now in California, America. I want to ask, if you are to summarize this whole experience, like if I ask you, like I'm 22 right now, and you were to start over at 20, and like what would you say to 20-year-old Zed? Like what would be
Yeah,
different, or like
I see. Yeah. I think that's a really good question. So if I think about myself, if I go back, sometime I actually think about that. What would I do? I think uh, don't stick with the classic narrative. So there is always this classic narrative, oh, do this, follow this, find this job, and then do that. I think things are changing early on in your life. You can take a lot of risks. You can try a lot of crazy ideas because the cost of failure is very low, right? Okay, you just wasted 6 months. Okay, there's not too much. You don't have family responsibilities. You don't. Your expenses are not that high. You're still young. You're by yourself. It doesn't matter. Oh, I tried this thing, it failed. It just wasted a year, but you learned a lot. So don't uh, stick with the more like a classic path. Try things, take more risks. If I go back, I'll actually not work anywhere. I'm not suggesting do that. I'll actually try, like, give a couple of years to try to build something, try to start some startup. You take some idea, and everyone has idea. Everyone is like smart. You guys are 10 times smarter than me, or we are, the older generation. So give that a try. Take more risks, adopt, constantly learn. So never stop learning. There's this classic mentality uh, that, oh, you go to school, then you learn, you graduate, you get a job, and then you don't need to learn anymore. You just like to just work and do some office work and all that. I think that's very limited view of the work and the things that people are capable of doing or the potential to do. So leverage your capabilities and skills. And these days, there's no difference. In Pakistan, you have the same resources available that I have here. So you can do these similar things over there. And then actually labor is cheaper. You can hire two people so much cheaper. Here, it's so much more expensive. So I would say that to computer science graduates to take more risks, try crazy ideas, try to build something, and then be more crazy. Like, some of the things, oh, I don't think like it's even possible. Like, okay, I can build an app that millions of people will use. I don't think I can do it. So don't have that limitation. Just say, I'm going to give it a try. If maybe two people use it. The failure is the greatest learning. If in that whole process, only thing you get is a failure, I think you got a medal. You got a medal and you got a learning. Whatever the next thing you do, you're going to be much more smarter and much more experienced than a whole lot of other people who didn't try anything. Right. So I think I'll say that.
All right, fascinating. It was really wonderful talking with you, Zed, and I think we're hitting the time almost. And it's been really wonderful talking with you, your experience, how you worked at Apple, Amazon, how you worked in Germany, all these companies, how it was being in the pioneering branch at a university in itself. That's quite interesting and fascinating as well. And it was a wonderful time talking with you, and I really appreciate it, and to all those people watching this episode, this podcast, and it's been really good. Thanks, Zed.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's been fun talking to you, connecting
Thank
to the people from the school where it all started, my computer science journey. It's very cool. Maybe sometime I go, I'll like to visit, go to Pakistan, like
you.
to
It's
visit a
really wonderful.
university, and then try to see all those things. It'll be nice. Let's keep in touch. It was really nice talking to you.
Inshallah, inshallah. Thank you.